Welcome to the show, The Debate. I'm your host, Sana Makbool, here with you at B2B World to discuss important issues around the world. In today's topic, we will take a look at two very important stories. The first of which is, of course, the opposition and the government talks that are on the table, only that the government and the opposition have to go forward regarding the ordinances that we earlier discussed in the show as well. Whether or not those controversial bills are going to be discussed in a negotiation between the government and the opposition, and the fact that the opposition wants a written assurance from the government that they're the ones who are calling for dialogue. That's a categorical statement that they've asked for, and that, of course, all of the some 20 odd bills that have been recently promulgated are going to be discussed. We're going to see this in further detail and try and figure out what exactly is the opposition strategy in this regard, what are the possible options for the government, how the future of these talks, what the outcome actually relies on, and what are we seeing in the future. And then, of course, we will also be looking at the very important Troika Plus meeting that was held yesterday or was hosted by Pakistan. And, of course, it includes important stakeholders in the evolving situation in Afghanistan. And we understand that, of course, this is a really important forum, and Pakistan has a really important role to play in the situation with regards to Afghanistan. We're going to see what exactly is the outcome of this meeting so far. What are we seeing in the near future? How we're going to be able to ensure and help facilitate the process of including the Taliban representatives and ensuring that they fulfill their commitments to the international community, and that also the international community responds because, of course, we have a looming humanitarian and economic crisis in the country. And so we're going to discuss both of the topics with our experts. Two of them are in the studio with me, as always, Mr. Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal. Thank you for being with us yet again.
Thank you, sir.
And for the first topic, we've also been joined by Athar Kazmi, who's a senior journalist analyst who will be staying with us on the second topic as well. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Considering the fact that we've recently discussed what the opposition earlier has been claiming regarding devising a strategy to defeat the government in the parliament, to be able to not allow them to pass the ordinances or bills that they've been trying to pass. And then now we see that the opposition is demanding a written assurance from the government that they are going to be holding these talks and that all of the bills are going to be discussed, and that the government is the one who is asking for these talks. Before we move on to anything else, give me an idea of why such an assurance is required from the opposition.
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, right. The thing is that, to be honest, what we've seen in the last 3 years, we can't really say that opposition is that serious about talks with the Pakistani government at the moment. The thing is that they're more interested in certain issues. Obviously, they have their own cases with regards to NAB and other things. They are more interested in those things. They would like, or they would love to discuss how to change NAB ordinance or how to change NAB laws, but I don't think they are serious enough to discuss election, what you call like how to develop a system where everybody accepts election results. Government is serious about EVM. Government has talked about bringing more what you call changes within the laws, basically how to facilitate this the old process, the process of elections in Pakistan. The reason the opposition at the moment is saying that you must give us in return, to be honest, they just want to show that, or it's the government who is asking us to come and sit with us. Basically, they just want to embarrass the government because there is a perception that government is not serious enough to sit with opposition, or the Prime Minister is not willing to sit with Shehbaz Sharif Saab or other opposition leaders. So that's why they want something in return so they can come on the media, show it to everybody. Here's Imran Khan now begging us to come to the table and talk to us, and we are not willing to talk. So regardless if the government writes or not, or government gives them a written assurance or not, they are not going to discuss anything seriously. They'll just use this for their own political gains.
Right. Faisal explained something to me that I understand that, and we all do, that the fact that all issues are at the end of the day resolved through dialogue. And my understanding was that anyone who initiates dialogue or who, from whose efforts a dialogue is successful is the one that really gets all the applause. If the opposition wants such a written assurance from the government, is that not something that they should also be wanting to come in their books?
Sana, here problem is the two key things which are being discussed and which are the core subject to be talked about. They are of course electoral system changes, and of course government wants the overseas Pakistanis having a right to vote for whoever gets elected in Pakistan. And the second one is of course related to NAB ordinance, and there is amendment which government wants it to be done. But these are the two things which are bothering the opposition right now, because if you look at the electoral system bill, then there is one thing which is crucial. Overseas Pakistanis, they favor the current government because they look at this government as a government of Imran Khan, who has been highlighting the facts that Pakistan was run by the corrupt mafia, and time and again. And if we look at Imran Khan's struggle, the big part of Imran Khan's struggle, the overseas Pakistanis, they contributed a lot in it. So if we look at the percentage of the votes amongst the overseas Pakistanis, then you would see that more than 90% of overseas Pakistanis, they are in the favor of Imran Khan's PTI and the current government. But if we look at the opposition, they have very marginal kind of vote strength in there. So they are not interested in that, because they know that if it goes through, the bill goes through, and if it becomes part of the legislation, then of course what would happen is that the current government, if it goes towards the next election, then the government will get a heavy mandate once again. So they don't want that to happen. And if we look at the NAB ordinance, then of course Imran Khan is someone who has always highlighted, we have time and again discussed about it, that he is the one who wants to ensure that the accountability system of Pakistan gets strengthened, so that nobody in future is allowed to commit the crimes, the heinous crime, I must say, because the crimes which has been taken in past, obviously related to corruption. When you do corruption, it is not that you are cheating the system, you are cheating the whole nation. This is what he has been advocating. So that's why both of them, they are very important, and it would turn out that in coming days, even if they sit and talk about it, then I don't see a solution coming out of it.
Okay, let's first talk about the bills regarding EVMs and the voting right for overseas Pakistanis. Both of these seem to me pretty clear in terms of helping and facilitating the electoral process of the country. What seems to be the problem for the opposition, not just with regard to their possibility of losing the elections, but just the arguments that they seem to be putting forward? Farooq?
Right. Thank you, Sana. In answering this question, I get the opportunity to answer a previous question. Last time you put it to Faisal, and I didn't get an opportunity to clarify. It was particularly regarding which one is of the 20 bills that have been presented in the shape of an omnibus, which one is more controversial. Faisal that day actually pointed out that it was NAB ordinance amendment, right? My contention or humble submission is that it is precisely the one you have pointed out, EVMs and internet voting. There are reasons why, and I'm going to go into those details as well. But let me also point out at this moment regarding the NAB ordinance amendment, it is in the interest of the opposition also to pass certain amendments. Did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. It was in the interest of the opposition also, because through the ordinance, government actually did something very interesting. It changed how or who is going to be the next chairman NAB. His tenure had actually come to an end, and then they had to actually choose a new one, and the opposition was not playing ball. So what the government did was that until a new one is chosen, the incumbent will continue, right? So that, and with complete powers. So through that, opposition actually came under pressure, and it is going to actually work with the government. I think it is going to work with the government, but there is a bad, taste in everyone's mouth. I tell you why. Last time, there were amendments that were being considered. The council from the opposition side, Farooq Naik, who has been in the past, who was the chairman Senate as well, he gave a presentation as to how to change the NAB laws. And while it was going on and it was put on in the text form, it was presented to the Prime Minister to approve. Prime Minister said that it was basically an NRO. So he refused to actually agree on that, and then the opposition, was told that you are demanding NRO, right? Because of that, opposition wants it in the writing. Regarding the EVMs and internet voting, there are two problems. One, of course, we are moving towards the next elections. Within 1.5 years or 2 years, we are going to have the elections. In that, when the government and the opposition actually go for voting, the opposition has this fear that through the EVMs or electronic voting machines, there might be some kind of changes in the output, right? That's why they are concerned. And then we have heard the Election Commission. Election Commission also actually has been putting up some kind of resistance. So the apprehensions on both sides are there. But the government's point of view is very clear that we had the stumbling block that has been blocking us for quite some time. And every time election results come, there is some kind of controversy. So why not actually go for a transparent method? Then something else happened. Recently, because of inflation, media coverage was adverse. Then all of a sudden, the expat community started releasing the videos, and because of that videos in support of the government, there was a lot of hoopla. And the opposition thought that if they are going to be given, 6 million of them are going to be given right to vote,
right,
and they break into every constituency, they might change the outcome of the result. That's why opposition will find EVMs and internet voting more controversial, and they will try to block it. But regarding NAB ordinance, they will be playing ball.
Mr. Adil, let me pose the same question to you. Which one of the bills and ordinances put forward, and let's just talk about these three, do you think is the most problematic one?
Rightly said by the other guest, the right to vote for the overseas Pakistanis. The thing with EVM is not just the opposition, the government's own allies. We must understand, their allies, MQM and Muslim League, Quaid-e-Azam. They are very traditional political parties. They do traditional politics. And in Pakistan, we know for fact that in all the cities, in all the areas, even down to the ward level, there are fake votes which are registered by the different political parties. So when you bring in EVM, it affects everybody. It affects all the traditional parties. It affects all the status quo parties. That's why we've seen recently that even the government's allies, MQM and PMLNQ, they are also against EVMs. So I think these are two things. And another thing, there is a perception within the Pakistani political establishment, political parties. They think that all overseas Pakistanis, they are in favor of Imran Khan. So that's why they are against the right of vote, to give the right of vote to overseas Pakistanis. The thing is that there is no scientific method to calculate or to judge that all overseas Pakistanis are in favor of Imran Khan. I've seen overseas Pakistanis, they vote for People's Party, they vote for Noon League, they vote for PTI. So there are different overseas Pakistanis. There is not a homogeneous like one group where everybody votes
Right.
for one party. But the thing is that the majority of overseas Pakistani, they do understand what real democracy is. So they are not willing to accept Bilawal as a democratic leader of Pakistan, the Bilal or the Mariam Bibi. The thing is that Bilawal and Mariam, they have never worked a single day in their life. They have never earned a single rupee in their life, and all of a sudden, their parties want us to vote for them, and so they can become prime minister and rule the nation. So I don't think overseas Pakistanis are in favor of their leadership. That's the reason we see so much reluctance from the PMLN and the other political parties. So they don't want to give overseas Pakistanis the right to vote.
Right. So the government currently obviously has a stance of engaging with the opposition regarding these bills and to have a consensus. But Faisal, as Mr. Athar pointed out, of course, there are allies of PTI who are also not in favor of some of the bills, specifically with regards to I-voting and EVMs. So considering that fact, is there efforts going towards the reconciliation of such stances as well? Is the government actually trying to bring on board everybody within the party and its allies so that they at least are at the same page?
They have been trying, and they have been trying. First of all, Sana, I would like to clarify here that obviously the allies, I think they have the similar fears, same as the opposition parties has, because their mode of politics, it has been always the same. The parties which are sitting with the government as an ally, they have a tradition of hereditary politics, which Mr. Kazmi, my really good friend, he was mentioning here, and I think he was right about it. People who are living abroad, people who have tasted the true essence of democracies in the West and in in America as well, they are of the view that these kind of practices within Pakistan, they should be there should be a end to it, and somebody who knows the society, somebody who has a long history of politics, he should be given a chance to represent the people of Pakistan. And these are the reasons. And if we look at the allying parties, I mean, majority of the allies, the politics they have been doing, it was the same hereditary politics, and you have always been seeing them sitting with somebody else, then else, and then else. And this time they were, of course, sitting with PTI, because PTI hadn't had the right number to form a government, and it was considered as a a token you can consider as to make the government, and that's what it was. But I think government is trying its really hard to get them on board. At least the allies remain the allies, so that government, the stance of government is strengthened. But of course, if allies they have problems not only with the electoral votes, but with the NAB ordinance as well, because you need to keep in your mind that there are allies and there are few old electables as well who had cases in NAB, and they can be considered as someone, they'll be bothered about all of these ordinances. That's why I've been saying that maybe the things would get very hard for the government to sort of come to terms with, not even with the opposition, but the allies as well.
Right. So considering the fact that we understand that previously the joint session of the parliament that was called was then called off within 24 hours, and the reason cited by the government was that they wanted to be able to bring the opposition on board once again, but there was obviously also talk of the fact that perhaps the government was not able to ensure the presence of the required numbers. Considering that, and that the PTA has a thin margin, anyway if there is a joint session of the parliament. Is this something, and then you have the information minister also saying that the government will try for a consensus, but irrespective of that, it's going to go ahead with the democratic process and whatever it thinks is important for the country and the parliament. Is this really an option for the government if the opposition is not brought on the same stance as the government? Can the government still go forward with the joint session and risk that?
Right. I presume you're asking me,
Yes,
right?
Farooq.
So, 3 words for you. Blood and water. And I tell you, this is a hung parliament, and because everybody sees a government in distress, the allies actually get emboldened and they actually seek more rent. And this is exactly what happens in a parliamentary democracy. And there are 2 parties that have been identified, PMLQ, which is traditionally Punjab's Punjab-based party, and very strong party actually, 3rd or 4th number it has in the ranking. And the other one is MKM. 3 things happened recently. One, the inflation issues that we have seen and the way media has been playing it up. The second one was again the same pundits kept on speculating about the civil-military relations, and the third one is the TTP negotiations. So there is a party in Karachi which has been depleted as a result of legal and counter-insurgency operations in Karachi, that is MKM. And MKM has been associated with the current government. So MKM actually has thought that this is a high time to demand that it should be restored in full size, that its offices that were seized should be restored as well. So they are demanding that. When it comes to PMLQ, I think that at this moment PMLQ is in a very unique position. Simultaneously, it has worked with People's Party as well in the past. Remember, one of the actually Pervez Elahi was Deputy Prime Minister during People's Party's time, and now he is Speaker Punjab Assembly. Everyone wants to improve their grades and their position or strength. So naturally at this moment People's Party is talking to him as well. There is a chance that PMLN might be talking to him as well, and there is always a possibility that in Punjab, which is thought to be a low-hanging fruit, they might try to stage some kind of change in a couple of weeks. So if that is to happen, or if there is a possibility, these parties will keep on demanding more at that time. And that is precisely why the government called off the joint session. It is not the issue of opposition. Opposition has been opposing various bills, and yet the government managed to get along, pass it. But this time it was a question of its own allies. The third one, Balochistan Awami Party, also has gone through a humongous shift in Balochistan. So at this moment, what government is doing is, while talking to the opposition and other parliamentary parties, it is consolidating its own ranks, and I'm sure that it will be able to by the time the session is once again called. And these laws, at least with the exception, I think, of EVM and I-voting, which is going to be a huge stumbling block for a couple of years, the rest of the omnibus might be actually passed very easily. Let me point out one very important thing. In NAB, there was one change. Last time we actually discussed that as well. Who is going to remove Chairman NAB, right? The power was taken away from the Supreme Judicial Council and vested in the President's office. It seems that there might be a third way, and the Parliament will deliberate on that, and opposition is going to provide its input as well.
Okay, that would be interesting. My last question for this segment, Mr. Athar, would be to you. In the scenario that the government calls a joint session and it fails to pass these bills, what's next for the government?
Obviously, it's not going to be easy for government to rule after that. To be honest, we've seen in Senate elections when Hafiz Sheikh lost his seat, Prime Minister had to call the vote of confidence. So if this happens, it's not going to be a good thing for the government. But the thing is that we can't just blame opposition and the allies. We must look at how the government has been dealing with different things. They have not been very forthcoming with their allies. They have disregarded them on many issues. There are issues regarding, bureaucracy, posting, transfers. So we've been hearing this sort of stuff from their allies for the last 3 years. They're complaining on different things. And the whole attitude of the government on certain issues, like we talked about NAB ordinance here. So we see an ordinance coming through, then we see they recall the ordinance, then they'll say we'll bring another ordinance. So the homework, it seems the government has not done its homework properly, and Imran Khan cannot be present everywhere. This is the responsibility of his team. We've seen recently in the parliament, the government wanted to pass some bills, but it lost its majority. So where were all the government members? So it shows they're not serious enough. So it's good to talk the talk, but government also needs to walk the talk. So they need to put more effort in it. So we cannot just blame allies and the opposition. I think the government is also lacking in resolve.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Athar. Stay with us for the next segment as well. We'll take a short break before we move on to the next segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the debate. Now it's time for our second segment, which is, of course, the Troika Plus meeting being hosted by Pakistan. And with regards to the evolving situation in Afghanistan, there is a lot going on. Of course, we need to be able to avert humanitarian and economic crisis in the country. This is a big concern of Pakistan and the members of the international community as well, and of course, the Afghan Taliban government. It is extremely important to be able to give aid to the country and at the same time resolve issues that will ease the way to make sure that happens, which of course includes the issue of recognition of the Taliban, whether or not the Taliban government will be able to ensure and fulfill the commitments that it made to the international community, which include inclusivity in the government and women's rights, among other things. And we will be taking a look at all of these issues and what role the Troika Plus can play in this regard, and specifically what Pakistan can do to enable the Afghan government to allow them to fulfill this obligation that they put forward to the international community, and then to also encourage the international community to step forward and take responsibility in the situation. We have been joined by our senior journalist and analyst who was with us in the previous segment as well, Mr. Athar Kazmi, and of course Farooq and Faisal will be shedding light on the issue as well. And we will also be joined by Mr. Asif Durrani, a former ambassador, and he's here with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Asif, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Faisal, I'll start with you, considering the fact that we've spoken about this before in a previous show as well, and we've talked about how important the Troika Plus is and Pakistan's role with regards to the situation in Afghanistan, among other things that were spoken about with regards to how the Troika Plus meeting has been put forward, is of course a renewed pledge to the concerns regarding humanitarian economic issues, the international community also taking an approach with this regard, encouraging the Taliban to fulfill their commitments, specifically also with regards to not allowing Afghan soil to be used against any other territory, inclusivity, women's rights, etc. All of these issues, of course, are there, have been there since the Taliban took power. How much can the Troika Plus contribute in resolving of these issues, or taking even a mini step forward?
Sana, first of all, Troika Plus, it is extremely important to understand that all of the parties, they have agreed to have a continuity in these talks. This is what was required, and it's the most important thing, that all of the things will be talked about, and if in future they needed more and more meetings, of course they will be meeting up, and all of the issues which are being faced by Afghanistan right now, they will be discussed. And another very important thing is that Troika Plus has actually highlighted the problems which are being faced by population at large in Afghanistan, and I think it was important to highlight these things on a forum which was a suitable forum. And of course we had interim foreign minister of Afghanistan of the Taliban in Islamabad as well, so it was much easier for him to have a forum and to tell the other parties that these are the problems which are being faced by them as well. So on being a Pakistani on behalf of Pakistan, I must say it has become much easier for Pakistan to advocate for Taliban setup in Afghanistan, because now Taliban were there. Of course, two major parties, the regional parties, China and Russia, they were there as well, and US, the biggest stakeholder of the Afghan peace deal, was there as well. And why I say that this is a success for Pakistan, because Pakistan had had been looking towards the world to come forward and to deal the issues or problems which are being faced by Afghanistan, and it was important. And the agreements like inclusiveness of the government, these were talked about, and the major parts which were highlighted by the US, and they had concerns that the things which are being discussed in these talks, they should not be mere words coming from Taliban, but action should be taken, and the concerns which the West has and which the other parties, the regional parties has from Taliban, they need to be addressed by Taliban. And at the same time, the humanitarian crisis we have been talking about in the previous programs as well, they've been highlighted and they've been talked about as well. And I think previously, as we saw, that the European Union as well as the Germans, they were not ready to to give their aid to Afghanistan through Taliban setup. Now I think there would be a sort of consensus, and sanity will be prevailing, and I think to some extent Taliban setup will gain a sort of confidence, not the clear confidence, but at least they can be trusted with the humanitarian cause as well. So I think this is what is the achievement of this, and more they stay in touch with each other, the more it would be beneficial for Afghanistan.
Right, and that is, of course, the hope. Mr. Asif, we've already talked about the issue in Afghanistan many times before, and something that has come up, which is, of course, the commitments that the Taliban regime has made to the international community, but also the issue of recognition of the current Taliban regime. Considering that, and the fact that the recent statement that has come out from the Taliban side is that since they're traveling and meeting envoys from different parts of the world, they are actually recognized as the sole representatives of Afghanistan. If all of this is taking place, if they are being welcomed at the table or treated and dealt with in a way as a legitimate government is, how much of a difference does it really make for an official recognition to come from the international community? Does the Taliban really need that at the moment?
Well, recognition in any case gives you legitimacy, and of course, Taliban, they right now enjoy the de facto recognition. They are in control of the country. They are in control of the population, and they are the ones with whom the whole world is talking. Even the United States has not snapped its ties with the Taliban regime. That's why they have shifted from Kabul to Doha, not only US, but European countries. And now the European mission is coming back to Kabul. Reason why I'm saying this is that if they totally snap their ties, then you don't even talk. Like Iran and US, they don't talk to each other. They have their interest sections. Pakistan looks after Iran's interest section in Washington, and Switzerland looks after United States interests in Tehran. So here I think they have received the de facto recognition, but now the question is what to do next. Now here lies, it is just not Afghanistan. It is now a bigger game played by United States and EU on one side, and the regional countries unwritten in an unwritten form led by China. So here China and Russia, two permanent members of the UN Security Council, and there you have United States and other permanent members of the Security Council, but United States speaks on their behalf. So it will be about future of Afghanistan. It's just not its geography. It is its own natural resources, because the now main issue is the rare earth material which are found and are estimated to be worth $1 trillion. So they are not going to miss those opportunities. It depends. Now, right now, prima facie, you don't find these discussions in these Troika Plus meetings or others. But this is going to be the actual issue which I think China and the US will have to sort out. And then something will come out. Otherwise, if you look at China, China has also announced humanitarian assistance, but it is almost a pittance if you look at China's size. And the United States announcement of humanitarian assistance worth $60 million is again a pittance. And when you look at the European Union, they have announced an assistance of 1.2 billion euros. So it is rather a substantive amount which you can say they have done it. So therefore, for the Taliban, when you talk about the conditions they have to fulfill, then that is important. Today, the Taliban's foreign minister Mutaki, in a function, he said very clearly that there were four conditions under the U.S. agreement which we have fulfilled. They haven't killed a single soldier after signing up the agreement. They are sticking to their assurances that Afghanistan's soil would not be used against any other country. They did try for the intra-Afghan dialogue, but they failed. And then this question of ceasefire does not arise because now they have captured the country, and they have captured the country not violating the agreement, but the Ashraf Ghani government, it melted down. It melted away, and there was a danger that there could be a condition in Kabul whereby the looting and plundering and murders could take place, which is why Taliban had to rush there. And that is why that now they are having an interim government rather than a permanent structure. That is because of the 15th August events which brought them here. So I will stop here, and when we want to proceed further on this issue, then we can go further. Yes.
Right. Farokh, you recalled something that I asked in a previous show, so you must also remember the issue of inclusivity that I raised once, of how other governments are inclusive or not. And I think that is something that was echoed by Amir Khan Muttaqi, considering how he talked about what really is an inclusive government and the fact that if that means including a member of the opposition, then did the Biden administration actually include Trump? And you know that's the kind of thing that was being pointed towards. Considering this, do you think it's valid to put the question of inclusivity at the table again and again?
Yeah, if you remember yesterday, I had told you that I am not very optimistic about this one bit. But regardless, the glib comment that you were actually mentioning, I mean, okay, it is a statement and it is a glib comment. But the problem is that the US then doesn't actually have to worry about running its economy or having legitimacy, right?
Right.
At this moment, Taliban are facing these two big problems. So I don't know how to reconcile his statement with what is going on in Afghanistan. But let me point out a few things which are very important. Compared to the amateur hour that actually took place in India a day before, the meeting, Troika meeting in Islamabad really bore fruits. One, it engaged all the stakeholders. The US was there, China, Russia, Pakistan, of course. And there, a statement came out, which was 15-point statement. It is before me, and earlier when I was holding my mobile, I was actually looking at its contents. The fifth point is exactly what Pakistan has been advocating. And what Pakistan has been saying? Pakistan has been saying that until and unless you engage Taliban, you cannot ensure their moderate stance and ensure that the moderate elements come to power or stay in power. So I'm going to read exactly what the point 5 says. agreed to continue practical engagement with the Taliban to encourage the implementation of moderate and prudent policies that can help achieve a stable and prosperous Afghanistan as soon as possible. Let me remind everyone who is watching, Sana, at this moment, that while we have this cliche that Afghanistan's economy is failing, actually it has failed. Their currency, Kabul doesn't print its currency within Afghanistan. Its currency had an arrangement, a British company would either print it in the UK or then in Poland. And secondly, the external reserves are parked in New York, and they are $9.5 billion. And then IMF used to give them tranches of aid and actually loan and aid both, and that has been withheld as well. At this moment, the only reason Afghani currency is standing is because it has zero exposure to international trading. Otherwise it will crash. And at this moment, Afghanistan's neighbors have been generous in lending the things without getting the payment, but they will be very soon expecting, especially the Central Asian countries, that some money is provided. So in that situation, Afghan Taliban and Troika Plus working together is great news.
Right, we're almost out of time. So, Mr. Athar, I also want to be able to talk about the issue of women's access to education in Afghanistan, which is also something that's been put forward time and again. I remember Prime Minister Imran Khan also talking about how change in women rights actually comes forward when the women of that particular country or nation actually stand up for their rights. It's not that an external force can actually ensure something like that happening. Considering that and the fact that this is something that's been put forward again and again, and the Taliban response in this regard, how do you see a future dialogue with regards to this talk going forward?
That was very important. To be honest, we must understand things are not normal in Afghanistan. We are not discussing Scandinavia or a European country. We must recognize the world's mightiest military alliance was there. They left in the middle of night with tail between their legs. So situation is not ideal at the moment. There are so many other issues. The thing is that all these things must be done gradually. If we try to impose things, or you must do this first or you must do that first, thing is that at the moment, the Afghan government or the interim government is worried how to feed people, let alone educate them, to be honest. These things will come gradually, as the Prime Minister Imran Khan rightly said. So we have to give them chance, we have to give them time. But the thing is that the Taliban must, they also must understand this is not 90s. We live in an age of social media. Every day we see videos coming out of Afghanistan. So they have to change as well. They have to evolve as well. And the world must also understand the situation in Afghanistan. They must not compare it with Scandinavia. As I said before, it is a different situation. And as long as we all understand who we're dealing with and how to deal with, I think in the near future, we'll see things improving.
Right, Mr. Asif, I'll take a quick last comment from you as well. Considering the fact that from the Troika Plus, there has been statement also that we need to move towards a more common one voice and a more common approach with the international community in terms of dealing with Afghanistan. Considering the fact that you have players like India, and then you have them also hosting their own conferences on Afghanistan, and the fact that perhaps the international community as one voice has not really happened in other issues as well around the world, is how do you see this moving forward? Will we be able to have a single unified strategy or approach towards Afghanistan?
Let me at the outset say that the Indian initiative was a non-starter because China and Pakistan were not there. So you can say the Troika Plus, half of Troika Plus was not there. And in fact, only Russia was there. Even US was not there. So in that respect, I think we should look at it from that perspective. India did try to find a place at the high table, but if you look at the statement, it was only in fact to blame Pakistan And the kind of language which was couched regarding so-called terrorism terminology, which normally Indians use, apart from that, they wanted also to malign Pakistan with regard to humanitarian assistance and reiterated their demand of sending humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan through land routes. Now, if that India is so much, concerned about Afghanistan, so Chabhar port is there. They built it for this purposes, so they should send it through there. So I think it was just
Right.
they were playing for the gallery. Secondly, if
Right.
I say, I think yes, we are heading towards that, and this Striker Plus will actually prepare the ground for the permanent members of the Security Council to actually come to a consensus. And once the P5 they decide about Afghanistan, I think then Afghan government regime will be recognized, and onwards, I think the normality will return. But when, I think it will take a while. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Asif and Mr. Athar Ghazmi, for joining us. That is, of course, the hope, and that's what we all hope for. That's it for now from the debate. We are almost out of time, so I'm sorry, Farooq and Faisal, I won't be able to give you time, but I do hope that all of you have a nice weekend. We'll meet you on Monday, and especially good one since we're all still recovering from Pakistan's defeat yesterday. So especially good weekend to all of the viewers watching. We'll meet you once again at 9 p.m. on Monday. Till then, take care.